Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. It is cold and snowing here again, but it's all good. I had a great weekend. How was your weekend? And happy Valentine's Day to anybody out there that likes to celebrate the day with loved ones. I hope that you get to do that. Man, I actually had like quite a few things to talk about today because I finally finished reading book 3 of The Wheel of Time, The Dragon Reborn this weekend. I hadn't been reading it. I kind of put it off, but I sped through the end. I got a new board game I want to talk about, which I'm in love with immediately upon opening it. And the kids, we'll talk about the kids probably at a later date, but I could have talked. There's a whole bunch to talk about. But what I really did this weekend, I got to spend a lot of time down here again. So like a couple weekends in a row, I probably spent only like 6 or 7 hours down here this weekend, as opposed to last weekend, which I spent something like 10 or 12 hours down here. 6 or 7 hours down here this weekend getting stuff done, and I'm really happy with what I got done. And it was one of those days where I was excited to come down here 2 days in a row. Like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go get some stuff done. I've got a couple of projects I want to finish, and I want to get some things organized. So I came down. I brought the camera with me, and then I ended up not using it. I was going to film setting up the dust bin for my little dust extractor setup. I went Saturday morning and got a trash can, which I finally found after not finding one locally. I forgot that we recently got a Tractor Supply, so I went over there and they had like 7 or 8 of them. And I thought I'll do a film of this real quick because I had to do a decent amount of research to find the right trash can to fit the dust extractor lid and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, it's really not that big of a deal. Just, you can even take the lid with you. But there's basically one trash can. And from what I could find from all of the major companies like Tractor Supply and Ace Hardware, Lowe's, Home Depot, they really only sell one company's galvanized trash can. So chances are, if you've got that set up, you already know what you need, right? So I decided I just didn't film it. I set it up real quick. It just required me to cut some hose and put the lid on. I mean, there wasn't much to it. And then after I did that, Em asked me to make this for her. This is just a prototype, but when I say that, this is probably also the final product because I don't really see this being something I'm going to make again. So I wanted to work on this, but I had a few details in my head that I'll talk to you about in a minute, that while I was working this out, I figured I would do some other stuff down here. So I don't know if you can see on camera right now, but I ended up completely redoing my clamp wall. My clamps used to hang like this on some slatted like boards that I made, and it just meant that the clamps took up a lot more wall space than they should have. So this weekend I made some quick little angled brackets to hang them on. They're just kind of in temporary spots because I left way too much room. I need to make another one for the smaller size clamps, and then I need to make 2 or 3 for my bigger like 48 inch clamps. And so these will get shifted around. They're just kind of up there as a temporary measure, but they worked out really great. It's just simple pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. I made a dado in the back of a bracket and just screwed it up, and I really like it. The problem that I have with that setup, I've seen lots of people do this style. My old style, I'm just going to grab one. The old style that I made was a 2x6 with some slots. I drilled some holes and then cut with a bandsaw, and this meant that the clamps set in here like this. They set up against the wall like this. Really easy to get out, really easy to put on. I have seen people say these break off. It's really easy to snap these off. I'm sure it is. I never had that problem. I'm not like slamming my clamps up against the wall all the time. But the truth is, in the same amount of wall space this took up for just holding 4 clamps, I could fit 2 of these brackets that would each hold 6 clamps. So I could hold 12 clamps in the same amount of wall space. Seems like a good savings. The problem is I am a little bit weird when it comes to using things, and I don't necessarily just mean clamps. I mean like just things in general. Like if I've got a batch of 10 items and I'm going to use 4 of them regularly, I try to rotate my stock as much as possible. So my clamps, I would put them in, in here. I could see each clamp. Here's a good example. I could see each clamp in here, and I could tell that this clamp is much less dirty and much less rusty than this clamp, meaning that this one hasn't been used as much, and I would use this one first. So I would always grab my least used clamps first, so that I'm basically rotating through my stock. The problem with hanging them up this way, the vertical or the stacked way, is it's much harder for me to see which ones need to be used and to rotate the stock. One of those weird things is about me. But I made those, and I didn't film any of that. I did a little art project for M. I didn't film any of that, but I did make this. And this is like, I didn't film it because it's just such a specific thing, and it's basically just some pieces of pine, nailed together with my trim nailer, and then trimmed in oak just to kind of hold it all together and turn it into somewhat of a basket. The concept for this is that M has a couple of laptops and an iPad that she keeps, in arm's reach kind of all the time. And one of those laptops needs to stay somewhat open because if it shuts off, it updates. And then when that happens, all of her security stuff goes haywire. So she wanted to make some sort of way to store them vertically in a nice space, but also keep them, from being damaged or kicked around or being set on the floor or whatever. So this is what I made. And like I said, it's just some pine standard SPF 1x material that I ripped down to different heights, screwed to nailed to another piece of 1x, and then I trimmed it with this oak. And the only reason I trimmed it with this oak is because I have a ton of it. Somebody gave me like a ton of oak and maybe maple and maybe some other like beech or something, I'm not really sure, stock like this that has a groove cut down one side. I can only imagine that this was a face frame. I think this all came from a cabinet shop, and I'm assuming that this is face frame material, but it's really strange to me because this dado is like 1/2 inch, so this cabinet shop must be making 1/2 inch cabinets, like 1/2 inch thick cabinets, and then putting big face frames on it to make it look, I don't know, less thin. So I didn't know that cabinet shops were using 1/2 inch. Maybe it's just for dividers, I'm not positive, but that's my assumption. So I took all of this stuff and planed it down until the dado was gone. So the stock around the sides of this is it's probably like, I don't know, 7/16. It's not quite 1/2 inch, but it's close. And I just used it to trim out the box and make it a little bit more attractive. And then I've pin nailed it on. I've got to sand all the filler off and then probably just throw some lacquer or maybe shellac on this. And then I'm going to line this inside pockets with felt so that the laptops go in and out, nothing gets scratched up or hurt. So I made this yesterday in just a couple hours. It was a really quick project. It was really fun to make. It's just one of those like no plans. I mean, I drew up a real simple sketch. Actually, I drew up a simple sketch and then I actually made a 1-to-1 template on some Christmas wrapping paper because it has a 1-inch grid on it. And I used this to try to figure out the heights of these that would look good with the angle that I was going to cut. And I screwed this angle up. I really wanted the tops of these to be about 3/4 of an inch above this angled piece, but when I made this, I screwed it up. And so when I cut all of these, I just cut them to whatever this angle was, not what I wanted, and then, fit each one. So I went in and just kept trimming and trimming and trimming these until they fit in perfectly. Worked out pretty well. I think it was an easy construction method. They're not symmetrical left and right. Doesn't need to be. Nobody's ever going to look at it that way. It's just to hold some laptops. So slammed it together for M. That was my weekend. It was actually really fun. Hopefully the rest of the week is fun. And I will try to get to... Oh my. I'll try to get to all the other topics that I've been thinking about over the next couple of days. Oh, I did end up watching the Super Bowl. I came back from taking the kids home, and Em had it on, and we ended up watching it. There you go. So thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is laggard. It is a noun or adjective meaning a person who loiters, sluggish, and reacting slowly. Reviewers must normally function as huff and puff artists blowing laggard theatergoers stage word. Walter Kerr, an American theater critic. Laggard. Laggard. That's a good one. I'm usually laggard. I guess. I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely not laggard when I'm just talking to camera.